Welcome to On the Chain.
Where were you when you actually when you heard about Judge Torres, and before you had a chance to read it, what was your first impression and how did that news land on you?
So I was actually packing my bags to leave for our summer vacation. We had a flight to catch in 2 hours, and of course, me, like everyone else, gets the file. And his tweet was very vanilla. He just kind of said summary judgment. He didn't really give a hint as to what was going on. So of course, I yell at my wife. I'm like, you got to pack for me because I got to spend the next hour kind of going over this, and then put out a tweet before we get on the airplane. So my first read through. At first, I skipped down to the bottom, so I kind of saw that she was kind of splitting the baby at some point. But I went back up, and it started really bad. It started off like, she was just going to kind of do a kick interactive or a library, ruling. And I was like, oh crap! Can I cuss on here?
Yeah, of course you can.
I'm just joking. I don't really cuss. I said, oh crap! This is not going well. And then I got to the second part, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. What's she trying to say here? And then I saw that, then I read through the last of it. And then I kind of went back and I saw the XRPs, not a security stuff. And that's when I realized this was a great ruling. Actually, at first, I thought it was a good ruling. And it took me a couple of reads through before I thought it was a great ruling for Ripple, and especially for XRP holders. So that's how it kind of all played out in my head. And then just to finish the story. So I get on the airplane, and I kind of knew I was going to do one last video when the ruling came out. But now I'm on vacation. I'm going to a wedding on Catalina Island in California. So I get on my laptop during the flight and I outline it. We get to Catalina, get to our hotel room. We shot that video on like the lanai outside of our hotel, and there was cars going by and people were walking by and catcalling me and stuff. It was very, very difficult to do it. My poor wife, she's like pushed up back against the wall with the iPhone, like recording. And anyway, we got it out. So honestly, my feeling was it was one of relief, because I felt like if it was a bad ruling, people would be disappointed in me, because I was very positive on Ripple's chances right from the get-go. I have this T-shirt that says allegedly on it. Right now I'm wearing my Elmo T-shirt. Just for that one. There it is.
Elmo.
That's my mood today. But I have a T-shirt that says allegedly on it. And, everything in a lawsuit is allegedly. I can make up a lawsuit and say, that Chip, you're an alien from Pluto. I can say anything I want. It's the proof. It's the proving it that's hard. And that's what I thought the SEC was going to have a hard time doing, was proving their allegations. And I think at the end of the day, they did have proof problems. So anyway, in short, my feelings were one of relief, and then of just happiness for all the people that had kind of hung on there for the last, 2.5 years.
It's been amazing, and I'm glad, to hear you say, that from the beginning, you kind of had a feeling on what the outcome was going to be. And it's interesting because we go back, Chip and I, right from day one, our thought process on this is that it had to end in settlement, or not settle. It had to not end in settlement. Everyone else was calling for settlement, and we knew it had to end in a ruling. And that's exactly what happened. And I overall, through this period of time, I knew there had to be a positive outcome for it. Gary Gensler, on the other hand, is sticking to his guns. He still believes that the ruling was incorrect, and he's going to hold on to the narrative that XRP is a security.
Well, in a sense, they have to, because this has been their position. I've talked to a SEC lawyer on a different case, and we had this discussion, and that's just their mindset. And a lot of securities lawyers have the same mindset, that even with an investment contract, the thing that is sold maintains that security status, like a security designation. So it's not uncommon to think that. It's just when you look at the Howey test and when you look at an investment contract, it just doesn't make any sense. And so I'm not a securities lawyer, but that made no sense to me that it would maintain its security designation even after the sale. So I think, though, the SEC and Gensler are kind of forced into this position of believing that, because their whole enforcement position is based around them being able to get their hands into the exchanges, right? Coinbase, Binance. And without that investment contract sale maintaining its status as a security, their whole litigation, like everything they've been building the last 2 years, goes to kaput. So They're almost forced into this position. But I just simply I don't agree with it, and neither did the judge.
So something that I wanted to ask you about that you put out in your last video that I wanted to connect with, because you said when you read through it the first time, you read through it the second time, but there was something that you picked up where Judge Torres went that kind of surprised you a little bit. Can you talk a little bit more to that?
And that has to do with appeals, which I know are on people's minds, but appellate courts are supposed to rule on issues of law. They're not finders of fact. So the trial level judge, the lower level judge, is the trier of fact. She's supposed to look at you, Chip, if you were arrested. I'm not saying you're going to be. All right, bad analogy. Let me step back.
I put it on Jeff.
In this case,
Jeff can be the example in this one.
Okay, I'll use Jeff.
Say a
Okay.
negative ruling.
Yes. So if Jeff is sued or he's in trouble for whatever reason and he testifies, it's the judge or the jury that looks at Jeff and tries to figure out whether he's full of it or not. That's the trier of fact. They're supposed to look at the evidence and say Jeff was telling the truth, Jeff is not telling the truth. The appellate courts are not supposed to do that. The appellate courts just rule on matters of law. They've never had Jeff in front of them. All they're looking at is a bunch of papers that were submitted. So the way Judge Torres phrased her order, I thought was very clever and very good, because instead of ruling on this issue as a matter of law, she really picked up a lot of little facts that she found during the case and put them into her order, which makes it more difficult for an appellate court to come back and say, Judge Torres, you're wrong. Jeff was lying. He wasn't telling the truth, when she's already made the determination that Jeff was telling the truth. And so by making it a very factual based order on the Howey test, she kind of, I don't want to say appeal proofed it, but she made it much more difficult to appeal.
Where do you think the probably the Ripple side, as far as defense, whether it was Brad or Chris, but where do you think, like if you had maybe 1, 2, or 3 takeaways, where do you think they did a really good job during the course of this litigation?
The Ripple defense team, I think that the thing that they did that was very important is they absolutely did not leave any stone unturned. I mean, they fought every little point, and most litigation, they don't. You could kind of see that in the library case if you followed it. They kind of gave in on the first prong of Howey and said, okay, there was money involved. There was a sale of money for money, and Ripple even didn't give in on that. They said no, there was no sale of money. They fought every little point. And the sad thing is that in the American judicial system, you've got to have a lot of money in order to do that. And I think that's, and because as we could see in the judge's order, you never know what's going to tip the judge's hat over. No one saw this order coming. I mean, it came out of the blue. I didn't see it coming. Ripple didn't see it coming. The SEC didn't see it coming. The whole, because retail investors don't know who they're buying the XRP from, it's not a sale of a security. That just came out of the blue. But because they had left no stone unturned, they had given the judge the ammunition in order for her to make that ruling that way. Whereas if they had kind of backed off on a couple of things, or if John Deaton hadn't gotten involved, or there were a couple of things that could have happened here, she wouldn't have had any facts in order to rule that way. So I think that's really what Ripple's money bought them. They bought them a defense team that just went hardcore on every single point. How
much would you weight Deaton's involvement in this? Because it looks like the SEC is getting a little bit aggressive right now with Deaton.
I don't think that she goes out of her way to say that XRP sold to the secondary market is not the sale of a security without Deaton's involvement. I mean, the only one you could ever ask would be her, and she might not really even be able to tell you where that came from. But I don't think that comes in. I don't think we see that in the order like we see it, unless John and some of the other amicus briefs did not get involved. And then the second part about them going after John is you got to keep in mind how embarrassing this is to have 75,000 people that the SEC is supposed to be protecting come in and say, don't protect us, you bastards. We don't want you to help us. Go away. We just want us to be left alone. It's very embarrassing for the SEC. It really is.
We played the little clip from Gary Gensler, and he used to be super animated and direct, and he was pretending he was the alpha, and now all of a sudden you see him and he's just super reserved and tripping over his words, completely different person, and I think it's that point, except first of all, it's big slap in his face, but when it's a slap in your face and now it's public knowledge to where people are focused on the fact that there was this ruling. And by the way, you were keep talking about protecting retail investors when there were 75, 80,000 of them intervening against you. You know, saying you're not protecting us, you're harming us, and stop your action. But here's the this was Deaton, two of them that he put up. So the first one, SEC lawyers argued, this was in July, argued that I was mad because XRP was suspended on exchanges and that I and others had lost money on our risky gambling bet. It didn't matter that I actually realized a huge gain in XRP, never losing any money on it. SEC threatened me and requested I be thrown off the case. That's over here. And here he says, in the letter to Judge Torres, the SEC states that it may seek further relief against me, in addition to asking the judge to throw me off the case. Dear JT, in case you don't have it, you know, there's the address, is the best address for service of process.
Wow. Was that today?
That was
yesterday,
I think.
Yesterday, yeah.
Well, I mean, when they say
third, I think this was yesterday.
When they say it may seek further relief, they're generally talking about sanctions of some sort.
That's what it sounds like, right?
Yeah, you could get sanctioned for filing something that's frivolous, or it's obviously not going to happen.
No, I think it's just a veiled threat. But the other thing too is like
amazing.
It's one thing to have 60, like you said, hey, thank you, but no thanks for the protection when you have 75 to 80,000 people. But the 3,000 people that went out and signed affidavits and had them, you know, like they signed them and they got them notarized. Like they aren't paying. I mean, you have a notary from your office, but you know, it's a pain to go out and get it notarized. Or if you do an online notary, you got all the proof. You got to, you know, I am who I am. And the funny thing about that is, here you have these people who said, I don't know who the hell Ripple was, just about XRP, right? So that do you feel like that had some maybe some influence as well, because 3,000 people, no clue who the hell Ripple was.
Yeah, that's a great point, that those were filed, not only because how bad it looks, but also you can imagine, you know, the judge sometimes, you know, I've never been a judge, but I could just imagine you're reading through the pleadings, you've got to come up with an answer here, yes or no. Sometimes he's a very, you know, Judge Torres does all sorts of law. You know, securities law is a very small, she does criminal law. She does something involving 9/11 attacks back in, you know, 2005, 2006. So, you know, they have to have this whole breadth of knowledge. She's got to make a decision here. And she's reading, and maybe one of these affidavits jumped out at her. Maybe her law clerk flagged it for her and say, hey, look, they're buying XRP, but they didn't know they're buying it for Ripple. Maybe that clicks in her mind. Well, maybe that's the difference here, is because how can they be looking to Ripple to increase the value of XRP when they didn't even know they're buying from Ripple? So, I mean, we'll never know. But that's definitely something that could have clicked something in the judge's mind, which led her to rule the way she did.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.